I really want to thank Chris, Front Porch, Project 202 for inviting me to come and to talk about testing. I was just telling him that sometimes when I say the word testing, I can see that glassy film over people's face. Maybe the reason why I'm the first one up and not after lunch, but hopefully you'll enjoy some of the things that I'm going to talk about today. I am not a front-end developer, so I've tried to make this look more beautiful than I really know how to do, but hopefully bear with me on some of the design here. I've been to a lot of developer conferences, and maybe you have as well, and there have been presenters, great presenters that have spoke about testing. And surprisingly, a lot of those people that are giving those presentations are developers. Which is great. I always learn a lot. There's valuable information. But rarely do I go to a developer conference and have an opportunity to hear a tester and a tester's perspective. And there is a difference. And it's not to say that a developer can't think like a tester and a tester can't think like a developer. But I do think before I get into the meat of Node and front-end testing, I do think it's important for me to lay some of the groundwork in terms of the different characteristics in terms of a developer and tester. Now you may say, I don't have these characteristics. These are just over the years what I've seen are specific characteristics of a developer and of testers that are apparent with very strong developers and testers. So as a developer, and nod your head if you think these are true, and just smile if you don't. As a developer, I have run into developers that are extremely creative. If you're going to come up with a solution, you have to be creative. You have to be solution-oriented. You have to be able to see the big picture of how you're going to make this feature and this functionality work within the latest technologies. And at the same time, you have to be able to do that in the most efficient way. And you have to believe, you have to be optimistic in believing that you can find a solution for this problem. Now, as a tester, you're looking at the requirements from a different way. When I get new user stories or requirements, the first thing that comes to my mind is, how can I break that technology? How can I destroy this code? No, but I look, where are the holes? Where are the gaps? Where in the logic will we have the most problems? And within the features, where will I see the most problems? We look in the details. We're very detail-oriented. So we look at where are the devil in the details. There's something that we're going to see if we are analytical as testers that could be a potential huge problem, but it doesn't show itself unless you get into the really details of the requirements or the functionality. We're always looking for new scenarios. In terms of user stories, in terms of requirements, there's always a set of acceptance criteria. There's always a set of scenarios that we expect that the user is going to go through. But we all know there are users that do things that are not what we expect them to do. And so as a tester mind, we're thinking, how do we expand our scenarios? How do we expand to cover a valid or cover user error scenarios and cover situations that could put our features and our functionalities at risk? We're looking at the usability. We're looking at the usability of the product, the features and functionality. And what most testers don't like to be told is we're pessimistic. But we need someone on the team that says, you know what, this may not work. We have to go ahead and really test it to its full ability to make sure we can find all of the defects as early as possible and get those fixed so we have a high quality solution for our end user. I think, and depending on where people are in terms of their scale of testing, I don't want to make any assumptions. I wanted to start off by explaining a little bit about the testing pyramid. Has anyone heard of the testing pyramid before? Is that okay? So there is an ideal structure for how many test cases and in what area those test cases should be distributed. At the base, you should have mostly unit tests. Unit tests are written by developers. They are fully automated, they're small and independent and focused on a specific function, method, or standalone component. The next set of test cases, the next set of test cases after unit tests is API and integration testing. That area is how do two independent components work together. This includes what you may have heard of web services, API testing, database testing, contract services. All of this is included under API and integration testing. Today, we're going to be talking about automated UI and functional tests. So the goal of this pyramid is to have less and less hands-on interaction with testing. As you can see, unit tests, automated, API, integration testing, extremely valuable and easy to automate. Automated UI and functional testing, a little bit trickier until today, where we all are going to figure out how to make it simple and fun. And you may have, the thing with testing is people use a lot of different words to describe testing. You'll hear someone saying, oh, that's an end-to-end test. No, that's a regression test. That's compatibility. It's acceptance testing. They all fall under the UI and testing the interface as the user would use it. There's some school of thoughts that you should end there, but we all know, especially as front-end professionals here, that you need to have real human eyes on your product. You need human eyes on the application. And so this testing is UAT. It's sometimes coined as UAT testing, usability, look and feel, the beta testing. But it's recommended for that to be the smallest subset of tests because it is most costly to do because it takes human manual intervention. So I want to talk a little bit about CI because it really is all integrated together. So you heard of continuous integration. You may have also heard of continuous delivery and continuous deployment. What is the difference? And there's different schools of thought, but I'll give you my opinion. The difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment is where are you deploying to at the end? So we're going to build as soon as the developer checks in their code, and we're going to integrate it within the system. We're going to test it, and we're going to deploy it. Continuous delivery, we're deploying it to an internal production-like environment. Continuous deployment, we are deploying that right into production into the hands of users. Now, the reason why I'm putting this differentiator out there is because some companies do continuous deployment very well. Amazon says that they release directly to production every 11.6 seconds. Facebook says they do it twice a day. Other companies, and most companies, can't do that. It's a challenge for them to be able to release directly to production. And what is the main factor that stops them from being able to take their product right to production? In my opinion, it's the quality of their automated front-end tests. And there's a lot of challenges in there until we as front-end and we as testers come together. And so here's my kumbaya slide. I have a company, and I go into potential clients, and they all ask me a lot of different questions, but they all ask me one question that is consistent. They ask, Stacy, yeah, you've said all this great stuff, but here's our site. How long is it going to take for you to automate it? Test, and this is automated front-end test. How long is it going to take? So, do you want to know what my answer is? It's always the same. It depends on your front-end developer. If your front-end developer designed your site, with testing in mind, with using IDs and CSS names and labels, I can do this in 2 days, usually 2 to 5 days. But if they did not keep that in mind, it could take me 3 to 4 months, or my staff, 3 or 4 months, if we don't work together. And so this is the kumbaya, is we as front end and testers have an opportunity to change the way software is delivered if we work together. And the reason I'm so excited about Node is because it gives us an opportunity, and Node is, and I'll talk a little bit about it, but it's very important for us to be able, as front-end and QA, to work together. And I say QA and tester interchangeably. That's just the old school in me. We have a shared language. If we can have a shared language, which is JavaScript, if we can begin to have a shared repo, and I've got to tell you, it's one of the biggest battles I've had in my career, is having development allow QA to look at their code. There's some people that believe it's like, you know, you can't look at my code. If you look at my code, you're going to figure out what's going on. You have to look at it like a user. It has to be black box. So black box testing, I don't know if you've heard of that, but it is dark ages. That's like 2000s and stuff like that. We now know, and specifically with the work that I've done, if I'm able to look at the code before I do my testing, I find 3 times as much bugs, higher impact, and in less time. Because I don't know, as a QA person, do I need to test all of these features in depth, or are they all using one shared library? If I know they're using a shared library, I don't need to test all 10. So that's the value of having that shared repo. The other part is conversation. We've got some great chat. We've got HipChat. We've got Slack. We've got all of these great ways to communicate. Excellent. But there is value in having a couple minutes to just talk, having QA and front end talk about where they're going and what they're doing and what their strategy is for the code. I had one developer that said, Stacy, I am not doing test-driven development. I'm not doing unit tests. But what I will do is I will talk to you for 5 minutes before I start writing my code. And I've got to tell you, just that 5 minutes of him talking to me and getting an idea of my perspective, what I'm going to be looking for before he coded, the quality of the results that he produced were outstanding. We had half the bugs that he used to produce because he never thought of the testing, or he never thought to code the way I was thinking of breaking his code. So we saved time and we were more efficient. And the last part is we have to have the right people. If you're in management or you have influence on who works together, I've seen teams of front-end and testers that go to lunch together, they hang out together, and they've got the best quality products and releases because they know how, they have that synergy. So whenever possible, if we can have that synergy, there's some amazing things that we can have happen there. Even with all that great stuff I said, in the industry, front-end automated testing gets a bad rap. That's why it's the highest part of that testing pyramid that I showed you. People say, you know what, this is quoting my friend, Stacy, front-end testing is a pain in the ass. Testing is time-consuming. People say it's hard to maintain. It's highly fragile. They say, listen, if I do really good unit tests, if I do great API tests, that's enough. I don't need to test the front end. And for some products, that is true, especially if you don't have much of an UI. You may be able to get away with that. But most apps still have UIs that users need testing for. Also, I've been told, you know, automation's just not reliable. There's a lot of failures. You never know if you can really trust your automated framework. So you see, we've got this big box that we're pushing. I probably should have it be going uphill, but like I said, this is not my area of expertise. So here, wait for it. Here's our solution. Here it comes. Yay. That's all I got for you. I know. Thank you. That's all I have. Okay, so now we've got this shopping cart. I know it's very domestic for some of y'all, but I got a shopping cart now, and it's Node.js, and it's really going to help us easily be able to make this happen, because there is, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't have an understanding of the best practices, you don't have that synergy, it can be very difficult. Node.js, and why I'm talking about it and I'm a promoter of it, is it really helps make this more efficient. First thing is the language. I've automated in a lot of different languages, Java, C# mostly, and I was pulled into a room and was told with a bunch of C# developers that we were going to do our next project in Node.js, and everyone's face was like, I don't know JavaScript, only the front end, right? These are back-end developers. But I've got to tell you, within 4 days, we were, I mean, other than callbacks, some callback hell happened, but other than that, we were actually able to make good progress. And I was able to, and this goes into front-end visibility, I was able to read their code and understand it, and they were able to read mine. It also allows, and we've talked about front end, we're talking about QA, but there are the back end developers as well. It allows us to be able to understand and get a deeper overall understanding of the product. And Node.js, which I think is very incredible, is the active community. When you pull down a Node module, chances are it's going to have ample documentation on how to get started. The community is very helpful in terms of if you get stuck and you need help in getting past some gotcha, that there's people there that are out and giving that feedback. And my favorite as a QA person is there's unit tests for almost all modules. So if you open up your NPM and you're installing a new package or a new module, you usually will see that there are unit tests that have been run that were created along with that technology. Therefore, you've got high quality modules that you can leverage. There are new packages being installed and implemented, new technologies every day. So it allows you to have quality tools that you can leverage, and it allows you to do it in a way where you can be very confident that there's going to be help and support. So let's talk a little bit about the tools. I didn't think you all were going to be able to read this, but I just love this screen. It's incredible. I'm just going to touch on a little bit of all of them, but if you, and I have these slides, I'm going to give you my email and information. If you want details, more details on any of these tools, let me know. Today, I'm going to be doing a demo with Nightwatch. That is our company's favorite at the moment. Nightwatch is extremely good at front-end automated testing, and it does take from some of the older technologies here, the best practices. Some of you may be familiar with Phantom.js, headless browser testing, used a lot in continuous integration environments, and extended with Casper. WebDriver.io, my staff and I, we leverage a lot for testing of mobile apps. We integrate WebDriver.io with Appium. Intern.io boasts of being everything in one, and I hope maybe in a future presentation I'll be able to confirm if that's the case. But intern.io is supposedly can work for unit testing, API testing, the full stack, and integrate into all of the main CI systems. Mocha is one of the more old school test frameworks, but it's tried and true. It's very comprehensive. It can be used for unit testing. It's integrated into most of the IDEs. Jasmine, for those that use behavior-driven development, who have product owners that want to see that their user stories are actually finding themselves into tests and plan to read them, Jasmine is a good option. Karma, for those that are doing Angular testing, Karma is well known and trusted for Angular.js. And Quality Watcher, which is a reporting, is a Node.js-based reporting solution to allow all of your test results to be funneled up into a nice, easy to understand historic dashboard. So I just listed a ton of tools. How do you know which tool to use? Because even with the tools that I just listed, there's probably someone that is uploading to NPM a new tool to do it even better. So this is one of the things that you have to keep in mind. You have to know your application. You have to make the decision of what is the best application, what is the best tools for my application and the technologies that I'm using? And what is the skill set of the people that will be writing the tests? There are some frameworks that are a lot more easy for someone that's new to JavaScript. But if you have someone that's very technical and understands and we want to leverage some of the high-end features and functionalities, you could choose another tool for that. Also, what's important to look at is who's going to be reviewing the test results. Some of these frameworks have mediocre or decent reports, and some of them have extremely thorough reports. Some of them do a good job of summarizing. And if you have your CTOs and you have your product owners, your business analysts that are looking at these reports, you want to find a tool that's going to give them the view that they need, or at least find a plugin for a reporter that does that. And then look at the open source community. It's very simple. Google the name of the tool and see what you see out there. Do you see people talking about it? If it doesn't, if you are risk adverse, you can go for it. But I always recommend to wait until you see that there is some conversations going on, because even with the greatness of Node.js, there still are going to be problems, there's going to be bugs, and you're going to need to have a community that you can leverage. Okay, you guys have done very well with the soft side. Now we're going to get a little bit more technical. I'm going to show you how we do automation. I have a to-do app, which is a mean application where you can put your to-dos together. I'm going to show how we automate it and export those results to a dashboard, and how we design our test structure within our repo so that it allows for best practices. So bear with me as I switch over here. Let me put this up. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run the automation. Very simple to run. And as I mentioned, we're using Nightwatch, or maybe I didn't mention, we're leveraging Nightwatch as a technology. Nightwatch is built off of the Selenium WebDriver, and right now is our front-end automated framework of choice. So you run npm run tests. I'm actually going to run it with npm run test and report because I want you to see the reporting as well. It starts up a Selenium server, and what we see to the left is our to-do app. The to-do app, you type in whatever you want in terms of the tasks that you want to do. It creates and updates the page. It's an Angular page, so it updates the page with those to-do lists. Our test is creating 4 to-dos, and after that test runs, it deletes one. You may see one that just was removed. And then it doesn't edit. You see that there's the first task is now editable. It's going to change the any minute now. It's going to change the text in that field. I ran this really slow for demo purposes, but you'll see that I put pauses in it. Okay, so all of our tests have run, and you can. I just want to kind of highlight a few things in the test results. One of the reasons why we like Nightwatch is because it's very clear and it's very easy for people to read and understand the test results. It will tell you exactly what it is it's verifying, how long it took, and give a summary at the end. So now let's look at the code. Let me see how big this is. All right, I love this screen. So what you see to the left is our project directory, and you'll see we have actually put the test folder at the root of that directory. This is where our mean application to do is also running. I won't go through anything other than the test folder right now, and I'll show you some of the best practices on when you create your own test folder, if you haven't already, within your next project, how it should be designed. My recommendation is to put all of your tests within the test folder. If you have unit tests, you create a folder under tests called unit. If you have integration, create one called integration. If you have front end, create front end, and then put all of your tests right there. It's a very easy way for anyone to see what you're doing, and as we make more advances in code coverage, having it there will be very valuable. So under tests, we have our library, we have our reports, we have our screenshots, and we have our actual tests. So there's recommendations on how you split up the way you do your testing. The first is test data. Let me show you the file. Okay. You all can see that, all right? Okay, right. Okay, so I have clients that go, Stacy, we need you to change the test data that you're using to add 10,000 more records. Or we've just modified all of our usernames. We need you to be able to change that. How long is that going to take you? Is that going to take you a few weeks? And usually it takes a few minutes because we separate out our data for testing into its own directory. And so this is the information that's pulled in to the tests, and it's easy to modify. And as data changes, as our test scenarios change, we have this in one location outside of the test. Where a lot of testing in the automated world fail, and this doesn't apply to unit tests. As a unit test, it's very fine for you to put in hard-coded numbers, and like, I'm going to test this with 1 and 0. But as you're creating your own framework for front-end testing, you really need to be able to separate out your data from your tests. This allows for maintainability and scale. The other area called page objects, and this, I'm going to go in presentation mode. Give me a second. Okay. So there's something called page objects. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but page objects and using a page object file is the location where you put all of the information about the hooks into the page that you have under testing. So these hooks we call selectors, the elements. How do you access that text box? Really, that's what it is. How do you find it? How will our driver, our client driver, find that text box so that it can manipulate it? That needs to be separate from the test itself. And those people that don't do that, those are the ones that have tests that are extremely fragile and take weeks to change because you have to go through every test and find out where you use this hook. But if you put all of your selectors, these hooks, into your page and you separate them by page, it allows you to be able to quickly change as the front end changes. The front end's going to change all of the time, right? And that's one of the reasons why people say it's a waste of time to do automated tests. I listened to a gentleman who's an advisor, he's at Sauce Labs, who is advisor on test automation. He said that 98% of his front end of the application he was testing changed, and it took his team 2 days to update 2,500 tests. And they were able to do that because they used page objects. The other thing that's really important is, and this is where the test automation team, even if that's a developer, this is where IDs, labels, valid CSS names become very important. So we're going to focus on the top part, which is the elements. And I'm going to show you on the page how we find them. You probably already know a way, faster way, but just bear with me. So here's our to-do app. In Firefox, there's a lot of plugins. There's plugins for Chrome as well. But using FirePath, oh, excuse me. That didn't. Okay, give me a second. if I want to find out how to hook into this text box, I'm going to use FirePath, for example, and I'm going to right-click Inspect Element, and I'm going to see that the CSS for that is there's an ID there of task. That is every automation developer's dream. That is so sweet. That took me like 1 second to do, and then I can go back here into my code and just place in pound task, and I'm done. It's usually not that easy. Let's look at this other area, which is this table of information. Okay. So right now I have done, I'm inspecting the element on this table. If you look at the name, you see that it's the class is to do, and then you see all of this column, MD, 12, all of that stuff. That tells a wise automation developer that if I choose that, it is positional, not functional, which means it will and possibly change. We don't like when it says columns. We already know we can move that in an instant things are going to change. So we don't use and identify features when we see names like that. Instead, we go back up the hierarchy. And you can see the great thing about FirePath is it does show you in dotted lines what that encompasses. And then we leverage, let's say we want to get the first row. On this page, that's 2. And we say, okay, well, listen, that at least is a little bit nicer than what we've seen in terms of position. And let's say we want to be able to get to that edit button. There's a few ways that we can do it, but we look for how do we capture this using something that's functional and probably won't change. We can call it by NG or some names like that, but we really want to use something that makes sense and won't change. So I'm going to choose for this one and you can see that it's put the double line around edit. So that's what automation developer or someone that is writing automation has to do for every element that's in that they're going to use for testing. As you can see, doing the task was a lot easier, and trust me, it gets way harder to be able to identify those. The takeaway here, and I've been told, Stacy, and this is from my friends that are that I bounce ideas off of that are in front-end development, and they go, Stacy, I don't have time to write IDs for everything on the page. That's going to be too much work. It's too much overhead. And what I let them know is that's not the expectation. If you look at a page, there usually is a very limited amount of elements or objects on the page that we really need to navigate us through the testing that we're doing. For those, I do recommend for IDs and CSS names. I'm going to walk you through a test now. Just give me a second. If this code is on in our GitHub account, which I'll share with you at the end. The first two leverage our page objects are also good for creating helper functions. There's a before method where you can clear your database. This is using Mongo, so we want to clear it. We also want to load our page objects. These first tests, which are verifying that tools are created and verifying that the task is deleted, leverage those helper functions. It's a little, and you see the pauses, that's for the demo purposes. But this last test I've written out so that you can see the details behind what's going on. We have to identify our row, we have to, and this is for editing, we have to have a string that we want to change. We have to identify how to access that edit button, which is what we just did. Then we have to click on the button, nor pause. We have to find the pathway to the text box that that appears once you click edit. We've got to clear that value. We have to set it. And then the key, the number one part of the test is the verify. So we have to verify that the actual text that we see is equivalent to the text that we pushed or placed in that field. It may sound a little complicated, but it's really simple. If you have the selectors and you're able to get the selectors, there's only a few functionality that you need. You need to set values, you need to click on something, and you need to verify that what you get back exists. I'm going to show you the dashboard. So as we run our tests, all of the results are pushed to a dashboard. There's many different ways to get these trend dashboards, but I recommend, it's extremely valuable to have a dashboard where you can see the results over time. This is for an executive and for leader. This is where the time and the value come together. Being able to see over time, when is this passing, when is it failing, how are we growing and increasing our tests. And I tell people, do not be afraid of failures. Failures are what show us where we need to change. We want to fail fast and be able to fix. So I have a few recommendations. Just a few recommendations before I leave you today. Leverage page objects. If you need to know more about it, reach out to me and I'll share. There's examples of page objects in the GitHub. Whenever possible, use IDs and CSS names for the functional side of it, not just for positional. Integrate your code with your tests. That allows everyone the visibility that they need in order to move forward how it is that we do automated front-end testing. And then run your tests often. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, we're only going to run our tests at noon and at 8 o'clock. And I'm like, this doesn't take any manual intervention. Just run it all the time. What you'll find is as people are checking in code, we can very easily figure out what code broke the system if you're running it every hour or every half an hour. And it has no cost, no human cost with running it as much as possible. But there's a lot of value when you're able to figure out where the problem is within your automated tests. Embrace your failures. Failures are where we learn. I have some of my staff that were like, Stacy, we stopped running the automation because their servers are down for a week. And I said, what? You have to run the automation even when the servers are down, because with one of our clients, we've been running the test for 8 months. And every 2 weeks, their servers go down. And if you have that statistical information and you go to executives and say, listen, do you see this red? Do you see these skip tests every 2 weeks? This is the facts that go with the automation. It will have more impact if you have that facts over time. And so failures can be very good. And that historical dashboard is what will give you show the value. And when you've seen that slide with the shopping cart and all of those issues of why people don't do front-end testing, when I show people on the dashboard of how reliable our tests are, how often and how valuable the information is from an overall perspective, and then to be able to drill down and find out the problems, it makes sense to be able to have a front-end application, have a historical dashboard to allow everyone, even if they're not in development or QA, understand what's going on. Key takeaways, let's bond together front end and testing, because I think there's some really amazing things that we can do and really how things are delivered. But we have to work together. And those metrics are going to dispel the myths that this is hard and impossible and it breaks, because it's not the case if done well and using best practices. And embrace those failures and have a lot of fun. My head is really big up there. So I'm on Twitter. QualityWorks is the name of my company. We focus on automated testing services and consultation. You can email me. If you get stuck, email me. Now, I may have someone else that responds to you depending on how hard your question is, but we are there. We are the founders of NodeQA.io, which is specifically around the tools and technologies for testing and using Node. Join our mailing list, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.